let me stop there and take any questions. And as I said, you can continue with questions just by email to me. And if you could just wait for a microphone with a question. Yes, over here. On the aisle in the back.
What can you tell us about the uniformity in the regional panels that interview the students? You have 16 panels.
Right.
How autonomous are the panels, or do they all have a standard?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Let me talk to you about the committees. And I appoint everybody. There are 16 committees. The chair is always someone who's not a Rhodes Scholar. The others are all Rhodes Scholars. In those committees, I try to get a balance of fields. I always try to have a medical or scientist or biologist, a physical scientist, social scientist, generalists. Try to have a balance of gender, and I have a balance of age. Usually there's at least someone who's had a recent experience in Oxford. And they frequently rotate. I don't publish the names of the committees in advance. The reason I don't is because many people would Google all those people and then waste inordinate amounts of time trying to figure out what questions would be asked. And this process takes enough time already without wasting people's time. And even if you do learn, because you've had someone the year before, chances 2 or 3 or 4 will not remain on the committee. But they're all constituted roughly the same way, and there's no point in gaming them. And actually, that's another, if I can, just add another thing. Geography. In the old days, and it's not that long ago, one of the things that many of you faced, and you still face, but I'll argue you shouldn't worry about it, is which district to apply to. Any American Rhodes Scholar applicant is eligible either in her home state or the state in which she goes to college. Some people, they don't have a choice. It's the same place. In the old days, there frankly was an uneven playing field. And it was reasonably obvious to anyone that certain geographies had fewer number of people. Not fewer qualified people or less strong people, but fewer numbers. Now I move the states around, rejigger them a little bit every few years, so I can safely predict there'll be somewhere between 60 and 75 applications in any of those districts. So if you're in Massachusetts and someone's at your college in Massachusetts and is from Wyoming, 15 years ago, it was obvious that you would have this person apply in Wyoming. It ain't obvious anymore. It makes really no difference. Another question. One final question? Yes, right here.
Forgive me if this is a naive question. I'm new at this.
That's fine.
Is there still an athletic component?
I'm so glad you asked that. Somehow I missed mentioning that. That's usually the first question I get. One of the things Cecil Rhodes wrote inimitably in his will was that he was looking, after talking about essentially academic ability, character, leadership, and compassion, and various other Boy Scout-like things, he said, fondness for and success in manly outdoor sports such as cricket. And that is, we haven't written that out of the will. So there is still a criterion that's broadly determined, broadly considered sports. It is clearly the least important. And I would say that only very rarely is outstanding sporting ability going to make a difference. But occasionally it does. It's still there. And so, but if someone has no athletic ability and never does anything more strenuous than getting out of a top bunk in the morning and walking across to his class, it's not going to be disqualifying. On the other hand, if someone is an extraordinary athlete or active in athletics, it's relevant. But is it going to make a difference? Very rarely. Is it something that if someone has nothing, that you should encourage them to do? So the resume, if they're a sophomore and you're talking to them and say you've got to go join the cross-country team or run a marathon or do something, complete nonsense. Again, it's subjective. There are going to be some Rhodes Scholars on selection committees who might think it more important than others. But it's there. if someone has it, and first of all, you have to ask, well, of what possible relevance is it? Basically, what we officially interpret that clause to mean is we're looking for people of vigor and energy. There are some subjectively who think that, if someone is showing leadership on a sports team, that is, a good indication of leadership ability elsewhere. And so some people may look for it in that regard. So, bottom line is, it's not a dead letter. It's still in the will. It still affects our deliberations, but it very rarely is a distinguishing mark that's going to make a difference. And again, it's one of those things that we're sort of the price of our fame. About every other year, we have a very famous all-American athlete elected, and he or she gets hugely disproportionate attention, and so people associate it with that. But it's, I hope that sort of answers your question. Well, do I have time for one or someone's waving if I can, just this last question, and then, but please send me emails.
The question of either finalists or non-finalists applying a second time. Finalists are sometimes encouraged to do so?
Okay, that's also another wonderful question. There is no limit to the number of times one can apply. And I'd say in a typical year with 32 winners, perhaps 2 or 3 have applied the year before. But as far as encouraging people to apply, I actually provide very strong counsel. I mean, one thing I've learned running this process is that, no matter what you say to groups of Rhodes Scholars, they don't listen to you. So I'm not sure how much influence I really have. But I strongly discourage anyone from encouraging, because I think it can convey unrealistic expectations. And what I don't like to see is someone who disrupts her career for a year to find some artificial reason or something else to do for a year just to apply for Rhodes Scholarship again. If someone wants to apply again, by all means. Now, and we've even had people apply one year, not even make it to the interview stage, apply the second year and win. So, certainly if you think someone is strong, you should encourage them to apply again. Occasionally, though, again, because I'm conscious of how much time and effort it takes, while I will direct selection chairs never to encourage people, because I think it even perhaps conveys a little sense on the sense of the person conveying it, almost a minute, indirect sense of obligation to look more favorably upon this person the next year. So that's another reason I discourage it. But frankly, I do try to urge people to find a way to subtly discourage reapplication when it's quite clear that the person is not going to win. It's never entirely clear, but again, we don't want to have people spend another year thinking about this when there's no realistic opportunity. I thank you all very much.